If you've ever tried to ask a dismissive avoidant attachment style one of the following three questions, their silence wasn't random. It was actually revealing everything. You probably just didn't know how to decode it. So, in the next 7 minutes, we are going to uncover why these three specific questions often send avoidants into a deep space of silence and what that silence actually means. And we'll talk most importantly about if you're a fearful, avoidant, or anxious attachment style in this dynamic, what you can do if you find yourself on the receiving end of this, but even more importantly, what it means about you and where you're at in your own healing journey. And after I tell you these three questions, I want to hear from you. What questions do you find in your life dismissive avoidants pull away from and deflect or don't answer? Here's the very first question. Where is this going? Or what are we, right? If you've ever tried to have this conversation with a dismissive avoidant, they often don't have the best response. And sometimes they move into a space of silence. But there's a bit of a process of elimination that has to happen here, okay? Sometimes a dismissive avoidant panics because they feel put on the spot in this particular space. And other times a dismissive avoidant panics because they literally don't want a future or any kind of commitment. Okay, so we have to understand the two differences on point number 1 of 3 here. And then we're going to talk about what you can do as either attachment style, anxious, or fearful avoidant for each point individually. Okay. So a lot of dismissive avoidants, if you say, oh, where's this going? Or what are we? Dismissive avoidants very much need time to process. We call this the dismissive avoidant lag time. They need time to process, to really reflect, to be really clear on their decisions. And they don't do processing well while in the company of other people because they haven't really learned to regulate themselves and be able to go deeply inward and really think things through while they're in the company of other people simultaneously. It's something that they very much struggle with. And so half the time or so, you're going to get a dismissive avoidant who, when you start to bring up the what are we conversation, retreats into silence or pulls away and deflects and doesn't say much because they simply haven't thought about it yet and they feel put on the spot. The other 50% of the time, you're going to be in a situation where somebody literally can't have the conversation and they are intending to deflect because they know already prior to going into the conversation that they're not looking for something serious. And so their commitment fears are coming up and now they're trying to just get out of the conversation as a way to keep the peace. But what does this actually say about you if you're anxious or if you're a fearful avoidant attachment style on the receiving end of this? Well, one of the first things is it says something about your standards, okay? And I want you, if you're anxious or fearful avoidant, to really consider what those standards are. If a dismissive avoidant doesn't come back and have that conversation with you, if they don't follow up, then that shows a lot that this person may not be ready to really stick around or invest long term. Now, of course, you may be in a place in your life where you're not looking for a long-term commitment either. Maybe you're just out of a serious relationship and you're trying to discover who you are right now. And I understand that. But for those of you that are in that particular situation, I want you to ask yourself, why am I so afraid to have this conversation? Or why am I so afraid to bring it back up if it's been deflected? And I think the place that most people first go to is like, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing to bring it back up. Or I shouldn't, have to bring something back up. Here's the reality. You should bring something back up so you can get loud and clear so you can decide whether you are wasting your own time or not. For example, if I was with a dismissive avoidant and just dating somebody right now, and if I was in a place in my life where I was looking for a commitment while dating that person, you would need to get to the bottom of whether or not this person's available for that. It's almost like, if you're going to buy a house or a car, you need to figure out like what the specs are. You need to see what's going on. You need to get all the information possible to decide if that's the right car for you, how you want to proceed. And often what happens is people get so wrapped up in what the other person is going to think of them, or in people pleasing, or not wanting to rock the boat or take up too much space, that they don't actually ask the necessary questions to get to where they want to go. And so if you feel like, hey, I maybe brought up the conversation, where is this going? And they kind of didn't give me a clear answer. And now it's 2 weeks later and like, where are we at? Like, I don't know what's going on here. You owe it to yourself, out of self-honoring, to have a conversation that says, hey, look, I know I brought this up a couple weeks ago. I didn't really get clear on the situation here. Out of respect to my own time, I know that I'm looking for some sort of commitment longer term. I don't need an answer in this second, but I need you to have a think about if you're interested in moving the needle that direction, because if you're not, I have to be fair to my own time and how I'm spending it and choose to walk away from this dynamic. It's like saying if you go to the car dealer and they're not giving you a clear price. Hey, I need a clear price in order to figure out if I'm buying the car. And if not, if I don't see what your price point is, then I don't know how to, then I'm not going to know how to proceed. Give me the information. I'll figure out how I need to proceed next. This is something that is really important in dating is it's self-honoring. And if you're somebody who's sitting here thinking, I do want a serious relationship, or I am looking for something serious with this person. I really like them. I mean, that's a deal breaker. If somebody's not ready and you are, and that's what you're looking for, it's a deal breaker. So you got to get to the bottom of it, and you can't be afraid of speaking up for yourself. And if you are, I want to ask you, what is your fear that comes up before you self-silence? Is it that the person's going to think that you're not good enough or you're unworthy? And then I want you to notice that what you were doing is you were prioritizing what they think of you over your own actual needs. And that's a call for like, hey, maybe I should work to do a little bit of exposure work, start speaking up and practicing speaking up and taking up more space in my daily life, irrespective of what other people think. Because, and we still have two other points here to cover in a second, but I just want to say, if you are in this position, and you keep prioritizing what other people think of you over your own needs, it's not going to do well for a life well lived. And you're going to look back and go, I lived my whole life from the outside in. I didn't get clear on what I wanted as a person, who I am, what is important to me, and then have the bravery and courage to live from that and to put that out into the world. Yes, it's vulnerable. Yes, it's scary. Yes, you may be met with a little bit more rejection sometimes. But in all of those cases, you are going to be met with rejection from people that are not a fit for you. And that's going to lead you into the life that you do truly want so much earlier and so much more efficiently. And it's really one of the keys to true fulfillment. If you keep prioritizing people and what they think of you over your own true needs and intentions, and like what you're actually looking for in terms of the desires you have for your life, what's that going to feel like 10, 20 years from now? What are the costs of living like that long term? So having a practice where on a daily basis you keep speaking up for yourself in small incremental doses will go a very, very long way. Question number 2 that they may run from a little bit. What's wrong? Maybe you see a dismissive avoidant and they seem a little shut down, or you think that something's on their mind and you try to say, hey, what's wrong? And they just kind of deflect that whole conversation. Sure. Maybe the dismissive avoidant is a little bit private. Maybe they take a little bit of time to open up. But what this is actually saying is that they struggle to co-regulate. And co-regulation is a necessary and important part of a healthy, secure relationship. It means that somebody can take the time to regulate on their own, but they're also comfortable enough to share with somebody who's very close to them in their lives and open up about their internal world. So while I think it's important to be able to respect that maybe somebody just doesn't want to have that conversation right now, maybe they're stressed about something at work and they just don't want to come home from work and talk about work more, right? Maybe there's a time and place for things. I think that we have to have a very clear middle path here. We want the middle ground. And if you see every time I dismiss the avoidant, you ask what's wrong, they never end up opening up. They never open up and share about what the situation is. You're left not knowing, is it about something that I did? Is it something about the relationship? Is it something personal? And if you never have clarity and context, then that person isn't really leaning on you in a co-regulation type of way. And what that also means inherently is that they're not going to get a lot of their needs met through the relationship. And what we know about dismissive avoidance is when they never communicate their needs and they never learn to be vulnerable with somebody, they actually can't progress through the power struggle stage of relationship, which, by the way, everybody has a power struggle stage of a relationship. And it's actually when they're most likely to leave. So you want to make sure that you are setting standards and laying down in your own healthy, open communication. Hey, I totally get if you don't want to talk about this right now or if something's on your mind, but I also want us to develop a connection where we can share things with each other, where we can be vulnerable and lean on each other. So I would love for you to take the time when you're ready to think about what's going on and if there's anything I can do to support you, or at least to bring some transparency so I know that whatever's going on isn't involving me. And by asking for that vulnerability from that person, but not making them be vulnerable right now in this very moment and put them on the spot, you honor this healthy balance of speaking up for what's important in terms of healthy needs in a relationship and each person being able to share their needs in a relationship with one another, but also not necessarily overstepping if somebody just does need a little bit of space and time to process. Now, before I get to question number 3, I just want to let you know that we actually have fully for free, fully available for a limited time, all of your attachment style pairing courses, okay? So if you are an anxious attachment style with a fearful avoidant, with a dismissive avoidant, if you're a fearful avoidant with a dismissive avoidant or an anxious, each pairing, we have a roadmap for how to thrive in these relationships. And you can actually check them out fully for free for a limited time using our spin to win down below. And you can get a free membership, you can download all the materials, you can get a free month to PDS, a free trial to PDS, a free course that you get to keep for life. So you can check those out down below if you don't want to miss out. And you'll actually be able to go in and dive into those courses and really start to get a clear roadmap about what you need with each attachment style that you're dating and what somebody else might need with you. Now, number 3, dismissive avoidants often shut down if you ask them why they are pulling away, or hey, if we were in the middle of a conflict, can we talk about this right now? Here's the thing. If you can't talk about a conflict and resolve it, I promise you, you have one of 2 painful paths in a relationship left. Path number 1 is you never talk things through and you stay in the relationship, but the resentment just builds over time until you're just in a relationship that you're not happy in. The other path really is that you end up in a situation where literally the relationship just breaks up because you're not in a position to resolve things. Being able to resolve conflict in a relationship is one of the most necessary things to actually make the relationship work. And I want you to think back for a second, if you're a fearful, avoidant, or anxious attachment style, to what happens. How do you behave in a relationship when you have a conflict and it doesn't get resolved? And you'll probably find you either close down if you're fearful, avoidant, and brew and stew in the resentment and frustration, which then comes out in a different way. Or as an anxious attachment style, you maybe end up becoming more needy or clingy because you feel like there's a lack of resolution, and then you try to hold on tight to prevent the person from pulling away from you further. But this is a very painful way to be in a relationship. And one of the cornerstones of solving conflict in a relationship is that each person needs to share what they experienced during a conflict, like what came up for them in terms of their feelings, have those feelings or at least their perspective validated and understood. And then each person needs to talk about their needs. So we have a little conflict communication cycle here: feeling, need, feeling, need. Okay, I want you to think of it that way in a simplified form. If you have some sort of conflict that comes up, maybe you get in a disagreement about, canceling or changing plans last minute, you have to say, hey, for me, when canceled plans happen at the last minute, it feels uncomfortable for me because when that takes place, I end up having to rework my whole schedule, or I'm not sure what this actually means. And what I'm needing going forward is more notice or more consistency. And so there you are expressing your feelings and your needs. And the person on the receiving end, maybe they, for example, had their part in the conflict is that you got a little bit angry and frustrated and were a little harsh and critical with your words to them when you communicated that you were upset with them for canceling plans at their last minute. And they might say to you, hey, for me, I will definitely be mindful to give you a little more notice if I cancel plans or change things, and to try to be more consistent. I'm really going to work on that. And at the same time, for me, when we communicated, I felt like my feelings weren't really considered when you were communicating that information because it was received as being quite critical and harsh. And for me, I need you to be a little more mindful with how you speak to me so that we can talk things out in a healthier way going forward. And when the other person can then say, yeah, I see that I was a little harsh and I understand why you felt like that, and I'll also be more mindful going forward. Now we have the conflict resolved. So think of it as feeling, need, but each person has to have their feelings validated. And this is a really important framework if you are an anxious attachment style or fearful avoidant and you want some ability to actually work through conflict so that your relationship can last beyond the power struggle stage. I will say in that Spin to Win promotion, all of those attachment style pairing courses have all of our different conflict communication processes included in there for how to communicate to somebody of a different attachment style and the best ways that that's received. So if you want to check that out further, make sure you spin to win down below. But that's it for today. Thank you for stopping by and for watching. Please like, share this video with anybody that might benefit, and subscribe to this channel if you don't want to miss any of our daily content. See you next time.